Millionaire ignores pregnant wife's calls. She's in surgery fighting for life, and he collapses in regret. Alexander Donovan has it all: wealth beyond imagination, a sprawling mansion overlooking the Pacific, and a name whispered reverently in the world's most elite circles. But beneath the shimmering surface of lavish parties and luxury sports cars, cracks begin to form. His pregnant wife, Sophia, begs for a moment of his time, just one phone call to reassure her in her most vulnerable hour. Yet Alexander is busy striking multi-billion-dollar deals and mingling with powerful influencers, ignoring every one of her calls. Little does he know, Sophia is about to face the most terrifying battle of her life, and fate will soon force him to confront his own crushing regret. Alexander Donovan was not born into wealth. He clawed his way to the top through a mixture of talent, determination, and fearless ambition. At the age of 20, he was already known as a sharp-minded entrepreneur, having launched a small tech startup that caught the eye of major venture capital firms, including Sequoia Capital and Andreessen Horowitz. By 25, he'd sold his first company for a cool 8-figure sum. It was no surprise that media outlets began labeling him the next Mark Zuckerberg, though Alexander always preferred forging his own identity rather than standing in anyone's shadow. From that moment on, success rained down upon him like confetti. Stocks soared, partnerships materialized from every corner of the globe. It wasn't long before he graduated to philanthropic circles, rubbing shoulders with personalities like Bill Gates at a global health conference and forging friendships with big Hollywood names. Yet, behind every camera flash and handshake, Alexander never forgot the nights he spent in a cramped apartment, living off instant ramen, coding furiously until dawn. Those memories drove him, gave him his fierce edge in business negotiations, and fueled his desire to never return to the days of scarcity. The estate he called home was perched high on a hill in Bel Air, a meticulously designed architectural marvel of steel and glass. Its floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the city lights below. A private tennis court, an infinity pool, and acres of lush gardens signaled to the world that Alexander Donovan had definitively arrived. And although it was dubbed by tabloids as the Dono Palace, Alexander lived there with someone else who mattered to him far more than all the wealth he had amassed: his wife, Sophia. Sophia Brookhaven Donovan came from a family of modest means. She was kind-hearted, always charitable, and fiercely protective of the less fortunate. Their courtship was the stuff of modern-day fairy tales. Alexander had spotted her at a small charity fundraiser in Santa Monica, an event for a local children's hospital, while others remained enthralled by the celebrity guests and the swirl of champagne flutes. Alexander's eye fell on a quiet corner where Sophia was kneeling beside a shy, wheelchair-bound boy. She was comforting him about his upcoming surgery, her gentle voice calming his fears. Her compassion, Alexander realized in that instant, was both humbling and magnetic. He approached her, introduced himself awkwardly uncharacteristic for a man who negotiated million-dollar deals without breaking a sweat, and discovered they shared a passion for philanthropy. 6 months later, they were married on the sands of a private beach in Malibu, with waves kissing the shoreline under a glorious sunset. The photographs splashed across society pages showed a beaming couple, seemingly the embodiment of joy and possibility. Their married life was, at first, an enchantment. They traveled together for business and pleasure: Milan, Tokyo, Dubai, always making time to learn about the local communities. Where Alexander's business sense sparkled, Sophia's empathy and sincerity melted hearts. She became an advocate for women's healthcare initiatives and began championing hospital reforms, using her newfound influence as Miss S. Donovan to effect real change. But as months turned into years, Alexander's deals grew bigger, more complex. Late nights at his office replaced cozy dinners, and a steady stream of phone calls intruded on their intimate moment. He was no longer the starry-eyed young entrepreneur brimming with idealistic fervor. He had grown into a global mogul with numerous boards, mergers, and acquisitions swirling around him. Every second he spent offline felt like a risk, an opportunity for a rival to seize an advantage. Sophia felt the shift. She often reminded him, gently at first, that it was important to unplug, to reconnect with each other. "We have each other, don't lose that," she would whisper when she'd find him pacing around the bedroom on the phone at 3 in the morning, negotiating a deal with a client in Singapore. He would kiss her on the forehead, promise to be done in just 5 minutes, then vanish into his home office for hours. When Sophia became pregnant, joy lit up her face like never before. She was thrilled to expand their family and fill the cavernous mansion with laughter. She pictured a nursery in soft pastels, a rocking chair near the bay windows, bedtime stories and lullabies. She dreamed of Alexander turning off his phone at least during evenings, so they could both revel in the miracle of bringing a new life into the world. But for Alexander, the pregnancy coincided with a fierce economic climate that demanded his unblinking attention. The global markets were in flux. Investors were antsy. Supply chain issues abounded, and every day was a race against time to adapt. Instead of stepping back, Alexander doubled down. He told Sophia, "This is for the baby. I want him or her to have the best of everything. It's only a bit longer. Once things stabilize, I'll slow down." She believed him. After all, he'd never let her down before. Yet, in the back of her mind, a small voice whispered that maybe Alexander had become addicted to the chase. The money was certainly part of it, but it was also the adrenaline of the deal. The sense of control over a boardroom, the knowledge that entire companies soared or fell under his leadership. It was thrilling and dangerous. Sophia's pregnancy advanced, and while she tried to stay active with her philanthropic pursuits, her body demanded rest. Alarms of mild complications, occasional fainting spells, sudden bouts of dizziness surfaced, leading her obstetrician, Dr. Grace Kim, to advise her to keep her stress levels down. She needed support, especially from Alexander. Yet each time Sophia called her husband, more often than not, it went to voicemail. Late at night, she'd wake up to find the other side of the bed empty. The staff tried to comfort her, offering tea or warm towels, but what she craved was her husband's presence. She wanted to feel his arms around her, to know that he was there through this life-changing journey. She reassured herself that once the baby arrived, he would understand. He would hold their little one in his arms and realize no merger or acquisition could ever matter more. She clung to that hope with every fluttering kick in her belly. Unbeknownst to both of them, fate had darker designs. All the signs of a dangerous pregnancy complication were there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for a perfect storm of neglect and bad timing to unleash a nightmare. And when that day would finally arrive, Alexander's world, built so meticulously, would come crashing down faster than any stock market he had ever witnessed. Sophia's pregnancy seemed uneventful to casual observers. She had the radiant glow, the gentle smile, the well-tailored maternity dresses that hugged her growing belly. She continued to attend philanthropic events, though at a slower pace. She gave interviews about women's health and how crucial it was for corporations and governments to prioritize mother and child well-being. Behind this serene facade, however, her body began sending subtle distress signals. She often felt breathless from minor physical tasks. Standing too long made her vision blur momentarily. After climbing the stairs, she felt her heart pounding painfully. In the hush of night, she sometimes felt a heaviness in her chest that pricked her with an unnamed fear. Each time, she brushed these incidents aside. She chalked it up to normal pregnancy fatigue, remembering how Dr. Kim had once said every pregnancy was unique and carried its own sets of discomforts. Sophia assured herself it was all part of the journey. Her obstetrician visits, at first, seemed routine. Dr. Kim was a renowned specialist at Cedars-Sinai in Los Angeles, and she'd monitored many high-profile pregnancies. She scheduled monthly checkups, always reminding Sophia to call immediately if anything alarming occurred. Sophia listened, but part of her didn't want to seem like an overreacting mother, to be who panicked at every twinge. Dr. Kim, I do feel more tired than I expected, she admitted one afternoon, seated in the plush consultation room. The walls were lined with pictures of smiling parents and healthy newborn success stories of Dr. Kim's expertise. It can be normal, Dr. Kim responded, her face kind. But your blood pressure has been trending a bit high for the past couple of visits. I want to monitor that closely. High blood pressure? Sophia echoed, surprised. She had always been in relatively good health. Yes, it might be nothing major, but preeclampsia is a concern in some pregnancies. We'll do some blood tests and keep an eye on your protein levels. Don't worry prematurely, but do take care of yourself. Rest more, keep stress low, and if anything feels off, headaches, dizziness, visual changes, don't hesitate to come in. Sophia nodded, promising to follow the instructions. That evening, she tried to reach Alexander to share Dr. Kim's advice. He was in New York, finalizing a partnership with an international hotel chain. Her call went straight to voicemail. She left a measured message. Hey love, doctor. Kim says, we need to watch my blood pressure. Nothing too serious, but she's cautious about preeclampsia. Give me a call when you can. I'd love to talk about it. I miss you. Later that night, in the glow of the bedside lamp, she checked her phone repeatedly. Every time she saw no message from him, her heart sank a little. She felt a swirl of emotions, worry for her health, longing for his presence, and a creeping sense of resentment. She tried hard to suppress. Was it too much to ask for a call back from her husband when she was concerned about a potential pregnancy complication? A week passed, and Alexander returned to Los Angeles, caught up in meetings at the Donovan Global headquarters. A grand office tower in Century City, the building boasted top-tier security, cutting-edge technology, and an entire floor dedicated to his personal suite of offices. Sophia made a spontaneous decision to visit him one afternoon, hoping to surprise him with homemade lunch, her mother's recipe for grilled vegetable sandwiches. Her driver helped her carry the basket inside. Walking into Donovan Global's lobby felt like stepping into another world. Stark marble floors, towering glass sculptures, and staff impeccably dressed in black suits. Every time Sophia visited, she felt a twinge of strangeness. She was, after all, the boss's wife, and people regarded her with a mixture of deference and curiosity. She had grown used to the stares, the hushed whispers, the occasional photographer lurking outside. In the executive elevator, she tapped her foot nervously. She hoped Alexander would appreciate the gesture. Maybe they could share a quiet meal, talk about the baby, plan a getaway before her due date. When the elevator doors opened, she stepped out onto the top floor, where a minimalist reception desk guarded the entrance to Alexander's domain. Miss S. Donovan. The receptionist, a young woman named Clara, stood up immediately. I didn't know you were coming. Let me see if Mr. Donovan can. Before she could finish, Alexander's assistant, Randall, emerged from the glass-paneled doors. His expression was a perfect mask of professional politeness. Sophia, what a pleasant surprise. She smiled, though his tone made her feel oddly like an unannounced intruder. I brought lunch for Alexander. Is he free? Randall hesitated, glancing at the schedule on his tablet. He's in a very important conference call with the board of an overseas consortium. This call's been in the works for weeks. I'm not sure when he'll be free. Sophia's shoulders sagged. She didn't want to impose, but a wave of frustration welled inside her. "Could you at least let him know I'm here? Maybe I can wait." He gave her a sympathetic nod. "Of course. Have a seat in the waiting lounge. I'll let him know immediately." The waiting lounge was a sleek space of white leather couches, abstract paintings, and tall bamboo plants. Sophia settled in, inhaling deeply. She felt her heart flutter irregularly, a subtle sign of the anxiety gnawing at her. After a few minutes that felt like an eternity, Alexander emerged. He was speaking rapidly into his earpiece. Yes, I understand the terms," he said, barely sparing Sophia a glance. He lifted a finger, indicating he needed just a moment, and continued pacing. "No, we are not raising the percentage. Final offer. They take it, or the deal's off. I'll have Randall send the updated documents." Finally, he tapped his earpiece to mute. "Sophia, is everything okay?" His tone conveyed impatience, not warmth. She stood up, forcing a smile. "I just came by to surprise you with lunch." She held up the basket. "It's your favorite grilled vegetable sandwich." "Right," he said, his eyes drifting to the screen of his phone. "I'm sorry I can't break for lunch right now. We're on the verge of closing this major partnership in Singapore. Timing is critical." Her lower lip trembled. "I understand you're busy, but, Alexander, I've left you messages. I'm worried about my health. Dr. Kim wants me to take things seriously. My blood pressure is higher than normal." He cut her off with a hurried nod. "Yes, I heard your voicemail." "Are you okay right now?" She blinked, taken aback. "I mean, physically, at this moment, I suppose I'm fine, but this is an ongoing concern." "I really need you, Alexander." His phone buzzed, and he glanced at the screen. "I promise we'll talk about it tonight. I have to get back to this call. Thanks for bringing lunch. I'm sorry I can't enjoy it with you. Let's do dinner, okay?" Without waiting for her reply, he pressed the earpiece and returned to his conversation, walking away, leaving her standing in the lounge, the basket in her hands and tears gathering at the corners of her eyes. She felt foolish, out of place, and heartbreakingly alone. That evening, he did come home earlier than usual, 8 p.m. He found her in the living room, flipping through a magazine half-heartedly. He sat down beside her, kissed her cheek, and offered an apology. But even then, his phone buzzed with messages every few minutes, siphoning away his attention. Sophia didn't want to fight. She was too tired to protest, so she let him believe his presence was enough, even if his mind was somewhere else. Nevertheless, a sense of unease took root inside her. She could feel her body, weary and strained, telling her something was not right. She hoped Alexander's promise to talk later would eventually transform into genuine support. Time was ticking. She was 6 months pregnant already. 1,000 anxieties lurked in the corners of her mind. And yet, the clock continued ticking on Alexander's deals, overshadowing the heartbeat that mattered most. Little did they know, each ignored signal, each missed opportunity for meaningful conversation, was laying the groundwork for a devastating crisis, one that would alter the trajectory of their lives forever. Over the subsequent weeks, Alexander's world accelerated at breakneck speed. Donovan Global was on the cusp of an explosive growth phase, expanding into luxury hotels, upscale commercial real estate, and even a new line of wellness retreats that promised to revolutionize holistic travel. Boardrooms across continents buzzed with Alexander's name, praising him as a visionary who could sense an opportunity a mile away and turn it into a fortune. He flew from Los Angeles to Dubai for a high-profile real estate conference, then to London for strategic meetings, followed by a brief pit stop in Hong Kong to finalize a lucrative partnership for a chain of health-focused resorts. Each success story painted the portrait of an unstoppable billionaire, a man who had the Midas touch. Luxury magazines clamored for interviews, calling him the modern Renaissance businessman. During these hectic travels, Sophia's calls and messages became an unwelcome intrusion into Alexander's daily schedule. Even though he loved her, her voice on the line was a reminder of complications he did not feel ready to handle. He thought she was overreacting after all. Doctor Kim had not explicitly told him that Sophia was in dire danger. So, each time her name flashed on his screen, he made a mental note to call back, but business always intervened. Meanwhile, back in Los Angeles, Sophia was anything but fine. Her symptoms escalated. Mild headaches evolved into splitting migraines. Her feet swelled painfully, making it difficult to walk. Climbing a single flight of stairs left her dizzy to the point of near fainting. She visited Dr. Kim more frequently now. Each time, the doctor warned her to drastically reduce stress. "I'd advise hospital observation, just to be safe." Dr. Kim insisted at one appointment. Worry etched on her face. "Preeclampsia is no joke, Sophia. We need to ensure both you and the baby remain stable." Sophia had no desire to be bedridden in a sterile hospital environment, especially if Alexander wasn't around. She negotiated a compromise: strict bed rest at home, with regular nurse visits to check her vitals. Dr. Kim agreed, but with a clear condition: if anything worsens, come in immediately. Bed rest was isolating. Sophia spent hours alone, flipping through baby name books, imagining a future she desperately wanted to share with Alexander. She tried to bury her frustration by reading parenting guides, crocheting small blankets, and reorganizing the nursery. She scrolled through social media, seeing pictures of old friends with their newborns, their happy families. A sense of envy and anxiety coiled in her chest like a tight spring, making it difficult to breathe. One evening, she tried calling Alexander again. He was in Singapore at that moment, dealing with the aftermath of a major partnership renegotiation. The phone rang endlessly, then went to voicemail. She tried not to cry, but tears slipped out anyway. Was she being foolish, demanding too much? Each time she left these emotional messages, she felt both guilt and desperation. Her mother, Margaret Brookhaven, visited daily. Margaret was a soft-spoken woman with gentle eyes, but she now radiated worry. She made soups and sat with Sophia, discussing baby names and painting pictures of a rosy future. "Your father and I will be here for you, no matter what," Margaret assured her daughter. But Sophia felt the absence of her husband like a gaping hole. If only he would walk in, hold her, assure her that everything would be all right. One night, Sophia was awakened by a sharp cramp in her abdomen. A jolt of pain shot through her, making her gasp. When the pain receded, her heart hammered in her chest. She reached for her phone. 2:45 a.m. She tried to steady her breathing, pressing a hand to her belly, whispering, "It's okay, little one. We're okay. We have to be." She contemplated calling Alexander but hesitated. He'd be in some meeting or asleep with his phone on silent. Instead, she called the private nurse, who arrived quickly, checked her blood pressure, and found it alarmingly high. The nurse wanted to take her to the hospital, but after resting for an hour, the pain subsided. Sophia convinced her it was just a false alarm. Exhausted, she drifted back into a restless sleep, tears staining her pillow. A few days later, Alexander finally returned to Los Angeles. He arrived home late at night, hoping to quietly slip into bed. To his surprise, he found Sophia in the living room, wearing a robe, her hair disheveled, her expression a mixture of relief and anger. She stood up slowly, cradling her belly. "You're home," she whispered, her voice trembling. He sighed, setting down his suitcase. "I'm sorry it's so late. The flight was delayed. How are you?" The question sounded rote, mechanical, as if he were inquiring about a client's day. Sophia stared at him, tears welling. "How do you think I am, Alexander?" she replied, voice unsteady. "I'm struggling. My blood pressure is dangerously high. Our baby, is at risk." Alexander's expression softened with guilt. "Why didn't you check into a hospital then? You know, money is no object. We can afford the best care." She cut him off, her frustration boiling over. "That's not what I need. I need my husband, my partner, someone who cares enough to pick up the phone, to come home when I'm terrified I might lose this baby. The nurses, my mom, they're wonderful, but they're not you." He took a step toward her, arms outstretched. She pulled back, her eyes brimming with hurt. The moment stung him. He realized how distant he had been, how neglected she must have felt. But a part of him bristled at the confrontation he'd been working tirelessly to secure a future for them. Couldn't she see he was doing it for her and the child? "Sophia," he said in a low voice, trying to remain calm, "I understand your fear. But you have to understand that I'm juggling monumental deals. These aren't trivial. They'll secure generational wealth for our family." She looked at him, a wave of disbelief passing over her face. "I'd trade all the wealth in the world for a healthy baby and a present husband." A tense silence enveloped them. Alexander glanced around the palatial living room, soaring ceilings, priceless art, the scent of fresh lilies from the arrangement on the coffee table. Here he was, surrounded by every comfort money could buy, but he felt more powerless than ever. "All right," he finally managed, approaching her gently this time, placing a hesitant hand on her shoulder. "I'm here now. Let me make it up to you. I'll cancel some meetings. We'll go to Dr. Kim together. And if the situation is serious, I promise, I'll put everything on hold." Sophia's eyes searched his, looking for sincerity. She nodded slowly. "I just need you to follow through. No more ignoring me." "I promise," he said, pulling her into a gentle hug, careful not to press too hard against her belly. She rested her head on his shoulder, tears silently soaking into his shirt. For that moment, at least, they were together, bound by love and the fragile promise of a better tomorrow. But Alexander's phone buzzed, and they both froze. He silenced it quickly, but the tension in the room returned like a ghost. She closed her eyes, silently praying that this was the turning point, that he would choose her and the baby over the endless demands of business. Over the next few days, Alexander tried to keep his word. He rearranged his schedule, rescheduled calls to the early mornings or late nights so he could attend Sophia's doctor appointments. He drove her to Cedars-Sinai himself. Dr. Kim was guardedly optimistic, but she reiterated the risks of preeclampsia, urging strict monitoring and caution. At home, Alexander helped Sophia to the couch, fetched her water, sat with her while they talked about baby names. The closeness felt fragile, like a soap bubble that might burst if either of them moved too suddenly. Yet the demands of the corporate world did not vanish just because Alexander had decided to be more attentive. Deals still needed signing, partners still required FaceTime. Even as he attempted to carve out space for Sophia, urgent messages found their way in. Some nights, he was up until 3 a.m. on conference calls. Sophia would wake to see the glow of his phone illuminating his furrowed brow. He'd sense her stirring and quietly slip back into bed, pressing a kiss to her forehead as if to say, "I'm here, but also not." The foundation of their relationship teetered on the brink. They were trying, yes, but reality seemed to conspire against them. And lurking in the wings was an uninvited actor, a complication that neither love nor money could simply wish away. Like a storm gathering on the horizon, it bided its time, preparing to strike when they least expected. The day that would change everything began with a glorious sunrise bathing the Donovan estate in gold. The sky was a vibrant tapestry of pink and orange, a serene facade that gave no clue to the turmoil ahead. Sophia woke up with a dull headache. She instinctively checked her phone for messages from Alexander. He had left early that morning for an absolutely unmissable meeting, his own words. No text, no missed call, just a lingering emptiness in their shared bed. She closed her eyes, inhaling deeply, reminding herself to stay calm. Stress would only aggravate her blood pressure. She told herself that he had no choice, that this meeting must have been truly critical to make him leave at the crack of dawn. A nurse was scheduled to arrive in a couple of hours to check her vitals. So for now, she sipped herbal tea and flipped through a newborn care book, trying to quell the uneasy flutter in her stomach. Alexander, meanwhile, was at the Millennium Boardroom, a swanky venue in downtown Los Angeles reserved for the city's elite negotiations. Today, he was hosting top executives from a European conglomerate known as Belfort International, led by CEO Christophe Moreau. If Alexander could secure a partnership, it would catapult Donovan Global into a dominant position in the European luxury market. Media outlets were already buzzing about a possible multi-billion-dollar announcement. The boardroom was state-of-the-art, with a panoramic view of the La skyline. Inside, a polished mahogany table gleamed under recessed lighting. Stylized water pitchers, crystal glasses, and an array of gourmet pastries were laid out for the attendees. Alexander's team looked sharp in tailored suits, exuding confidence. He was the picture of composure, crisp navy suit, burgundy tie, hair neatly combed, his posture unwavering. Yet beneath that poised exterior, he felt the slightest tremor of guilt. He'd left Sophia alone again, breaking his vow of consistent presence. But the magnitude of this deal seemed to overshadow any personal misgivings. The meeting began with polite introductions, a cordial exchange of pleasantries, and a carefully choreographed presentation outlining the mutual benefits of a Donovan-Belfort partnership. Slides flashed figures in the billions. Growth projections soared. By mid-morning, they were deep into negotiations, with both sides firing questions, clarifying terms, and strategizing potential expansions. Alexander's phone vibrated a few times, but he ignored it. He had instructed Randall to filter his calls. If Sophia called, Randall was to inform him discreetly, but so far, no word from the assistant. By the end of the second hour, tension filled the room as they edged closer to a tentative agreement. The air felt thick with ambition, a heady mixture that intoxicated Alexander as much as it empowered him. Around noon, the group broke for a short recess. Alexander stepped out into the hallway, glancing at his phone. He had missed calls from an unknown local number and a text from Randall, which read, "We have an urgent matter regarding Miss S. Donovan." His pulse spiked. Without hesitation, he dialed Randall's number. "Alexander?" Randall answered immediately, voice stressed. "What's going on?" "Sophia's nurse just contacted me. She was trying to reach you, but you weren't picking up. Sophia collapsed at home. They've taken her to Cedars-Sinai." The words slammed into Alexander like a physical blow. His heart lurched. "What do you mean collapsed?" "It's serious. They suspect her blood pressure skyrocketed. They're performing emergency tests. Dr. Kim is on it. You need to get there." Alexander ended the call without another word. His entire body felt cold, a numbness creeping into his fingers. In the boardroom, the executives waited, but in that moment, nothing mattered except Sophia. He re-entered the room, face pale, voice trembling as he addressed Christophe Moreau and his team. I must excuse myself. There's a family emergency. My team will continue the discussion." Without waiting for a response, he grabbed his briefcase and stormed out, ignoring the flurry of confusion and concern behind him. His driver, Mark, stood by the sleek black SUV parked outside the building. Alexander's voice shook with urgency. "To Cedars-Sinai, now." Traffic felt glacial. Every red light, every slow car ahead was an insult, a personal torment. Alexander tapped his foot impatiently, fists clenched. He thought about the times Sophia had called him, the messages he'd brushed aside. Guilt roared inside him. He pressed an urgent call to Dr. Kim, but it went straight to voicemail. Panic clawed at his chest. When they finally reached the hospital, Alexander rushed through the glass doors, heading straight for the maternity ward. A flustered nurse pointed him toward a waiting area where Margaret sat hunched over, eyes swollen from crying. "What happened?" he demanded, voice cracking. Margaret looked up, relief and anger mixing in her gaze. "Where were you, Alexander?" "She's been calling. Her nurse found her on the floor. She was unconscious. They said it's a severe case of preeclampsia, maybe HELLP syndrome." Her voice quivered at the acronym, a life-threatening variant of preeclampsia. Alexander's legs wobbled. He forced himself to stay upright. "Where is she now?" "Emergency surgery. They said they have to do a C-section immediately." "She's only 7 months along, but they can't wait." The baby's heartbeat was dropping. He stood there, powerless. Time moved in slow motion. His vision tunneled. The hospital's fluorescent lights and white walls felt oppressive, like a cage closing in around him. He tried to find words, any words, but his throat felt constricted. Then a doctor emerged. Dr. Kim, her scrubs stained with tension. She held up a hand to stop Alexander from bombarding her with questions. "Sophia's condition is critical," she stated, voice steadied by professionalism but tinted with genuine worry. "We're performing an emergency C-section. It's the only chance to save both mother and child. Her blood pressure is dangerously high, her liver enzymes are elevated, and platelets are low. Classic HELLP syndrome. We need to act fast." Alexander swallowed hard. "But she'll survive, right?" "The baby? We're doing everything we can," Dr. Kim replied, her expression grim but determined. "Pray." The doctor disappeared back into the operating room. Alexander stumbled to a chair. Margaret sank beside him, tears rolling down her cheeks. He reached for her hand, unsure if he had the right to seek comfort from the woman whose daughter he had so clearly neglected. Silence loomed between them. Minutes ticked by like hours, each second an eternity of terror. Alexander's mind swarmed with guilt-laden memories, missed calls, half-hearted promises, the times he prioritized deals over the life blossoming inside Sophia. He prayed silently, bargaining with any higher power that would listen. "Give me another chance. Please let them survive. I'll be better, I promise." Surgical lights glared down on Sophia's unconscious form as the medical team worked with synchronized precision. Dr. Kim took the lead, issuing rapid instructions to the nurses and anesthesiologist. The baby was in distress. Sophia's vitals were erratic. They monitored her heart rate, which surged and dipped ominously. Outside, Alexander and Margaret were joined by a handful of supportive family members, Sophia's sister, Miranda, and a few close friends who had rushed over upon hearing the news. Faces were drawn, eyes red from tears, whispers of comfort floated through the waiting room, but nothing could quell Alexander's sense of dread. He felt like the loneliest man in the world, despite being surrounded by people who cared. At last, a different doctor emerged. He gently pulled down his face mask. "Mr. Donovan?" Alexander stood on trembling legs, Margaret beside him. "Yes?" The doctor offered a tired but reassuring nod. "We managed to deliver the baby a boy. He's premature but stable for now. We have him in the neonatal intensive care unit. Sophia's condition, however, remains critical. Her blood pressure is still extremely high, and she's lost a lot of blood. We're trying to manage potential organ complications." Alexander's relief at the baby's survival was overshadowed by the hammer blow of Sophie's precarious state. "Can I see her?" "She's in recovery but not out of danger. You can go in briefly. She hasn't regained consciousness yet." Clutching Margaret's hand, Alexander strode down the corridor toward the recovery room, heart pounding. When he entered, the sterile beeping of machines assaulted his ears. Sophia lay on a hospital bed, tubes and wires everywhere. Her face looked pale and gaunt, and the fourth drip fed her medication, while monitors displayed a constant stream of fluctuating data. He approached gingerly, terrified of causing her any more pain. He gently brushed a strand of hair from her forehead, noticing how cold her skin felt. "Sophia," he murmured, voice cracking, "I'm here. I'm so sorry." As if in response, her eyelids fluttered, but she remained unconscious. A nurse came in, checking the fourth bag, adjusting the monitors. Alexander hovered by her side, helpless. "Is she going to wake up soon?" he asked, his eyes wide with fear. The nurse responded in a gentle tone, "We hope so. Her body's been through a shock. We're giving her time to stabilize. The next 24 hours are critical." Alexander nodded, stepping aside so the nurse could finish her work. He looked down at his wife's silent figure, remembering their wedding day, how she sparkled in the setting sun on that Malibu beach. He recalled the day he first saw her at the Children's Hospital fundraiser, and in those memories he saw a man who once vowed to cherish her above all else. Where had that man gone? How had he strayed so far? Guilt flooded him like a tsunami. He collapsed into a chair beside the bed, burying his face in his hands. This was all his fault, he told himself. He should have been there, should have recognized the severity of her condition, should have dropped everything to ensure she was safe. But he'd been too consumed by deals, accolades, and boardroom dramas to notice the real drama unfolding at home. Margaret placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "I believe Sophia will pull through," she said, though her own eyes brimmed with tears. "She's strong. She loves you." Alexander nodded, tears streaming down his cheeks. No word could articulate the depth of his remorse. He stayed there, whispering silent pleas, waiting for any sign that Sophia would open her eyes and come back to him. While Sophia battled for her life, their newborn son fought his own struggle in the neonatal intensive care unit. Alexander, finally pulling himself from Sophia's side, mustered the courage to visit the NICU, accompanied by Margaret and a kind nurse named Rachel Evans. Rachel was a long-time NICU nurse known for her compassionate care. She'd seen countless premature babies beat the odds, and she sincerely hoped this tiny Donovan baby would be another success story. Inside the NICU, incubators lined the room, each holding a fragile life. The hush was punctuated by the quiet hum of machines and the soft beeping of monitors. Alexander stood at the side of the incubator, labeled Baby Boy Donovan, looking in with tear-filled eyes at a tiny human struggling to breathe through tubes and wires. "Your son is about 3 pounds, Rachel explained softly. "He's receiving oxygen support, but he's responsive. We'll keep him under close watch for infections or complications." Margaret pressed a trembling hand to her chest, tears falling. "He's so small." Alexander couldn't speak for a moment, overwhelmed by a mixture of fear, awe, and overwhelming paternal love. Finally he whispered, "He's perfect." In that moment, seeing his son so vulnerable, Alexander felt the weight of fatherhood crash down upon him. All the wealth he possessed suddenly seemed trivial. No amount of money could buy instant health or guarantee Sophia's and the baby's safe recovery. He gently placed a hand against the incubator's glass. "Hey there, little guy," he murmured. "I'm your dad, and I promise, as soon as you and your mum are better, I'm going to be there for you, always." Margaret placed an arm around his shoulder. "He'll pull through," she said, though her voice was thick with emotion, "and so will Sophia." Yet, the hours that followed did not bring the relief Alexander so desperately wanted. Despite blood transfusions, medications to lower her blood pressure, and continuous monitoring, Sophia's condition remained unstable. She was transferred to the intensive care unit for closer observation. Dr. Kim and a team of specialists took turns by her bedside, adjusting treatments and analyzing lab results that refused to normalize. At one point, Dr. Kim approached Alexander with a heavy expression. "Her kidneys are under strain," she reported. "We're seeing signs of potential liver damage. We've done everything medically possible to stabilize her, but her body needs to respond. We can only watch and wait. Watch and wait." Alexander felt as though he was suspended in time, each tick of the clock a slow drip of torment. He neglected sleep, refused to eat more than bites of sandwiches or sips of coffee. He stayed in the hospital, pacing the sterile corridors, haunted by the possibility of losing the love of his life. Margaret insisted he return home to rest, but he refused. He couldn't abandon Sophia now, not after all the times he'd turned his back on her in favor of business. This was where he belonged. On a rare break, to breathe some fresh air, he stepped into the hospital courtyard. The sky was a flat grey. A drizzle of rain fell, mirroring his mood. He gazed up, letting droplets cling to his eyelashes. Under that overcast sky, a memory resurfaced. That day in Santa Monica, where he first saw Sophia comforting that sick boy. She had been a stranger, yet so full of care and empathy. He never forgot the warmth in her eyes. She was a beacon of love in a world often dominated by greed and self-interest. She had become his moral compass, his reason for striving, and somewhere along the way he had lost sight of that. He fished out his phone, once the source of unstoppable demands, and stared at the screensaver, a photo of him and Sophia on a yacht during happier days, both smiling at the camera. His finger hovered over the contact list. For a fleeting second, he thought about calling off every deal, every negotiation, every merger. Selling Donovan Global or stepping down as CEO, if that's what it took to earn another chance with Sophia. No business victory was worth living in a world where she didn't exist. With trembling resolve, he dialed Randall's number. It rang once, twice, then connected. "Alexander, how is everything?" Randall asked. He sounded anxious. "Randall, postpone all my meetings. Tell them I don't know when I'll be available. If they insist on my presence, inform them. I'm dealing with a life and death family emergency." He paused, tears threatening once again. "And if that jeopardizes the deals, so be it." Randall was silent for a moment. "I understand. Consider it done." He ended the call, letting the phone drop into his pocket. The rain was coming down a bit heavier now, but he didn't care. He stood there, letting the cool drops wash over him, hoping it could cleanse the guilt clinging to his soul. He whispered a simple prayer. "Please, God, let her be all right. I'll give up everything if it means she can come back to me." Sophia's condition remained precarious for another 48 hours. In that time, Alexander lived in a purgatory of dread. Hospital staff gently encouraged him to take care of himself, but he refused to leave. He camped in the waiting room outside the ICU, dozing off in uncomfortable chairs, roused by the beep of a monitor or the sound of footsteps in the hallway. He stood vigil over the baby too, marveling at the tiny heartbeat flickering on the NICU monitors. The neonatologists were cautiously optimistic about the baby's prognosis. He was responding well to the treatments, gaining a little strength each day, but they warned that any number of complications could arise in premature infants. When alone with his thoughts, Alexander's mind meandered through a labyrinth of self-blame. Memories of snubbing Sophia's calls replayed in an endless loop. He recalled the night she brought homemade lunch to his office, the time he'd cut her off mid-sentence to handle a phone call. Each recollection stabbed at his conscience. Late on the second night, while the corridor was quiet, a distant figure approached Dr. Kim. She looked exhausted, but her expression carried a small glimmer of hope. "Alexander," she said softly, "Sophia's blood pressure is coming down. Her kidney function is still fragile, but it's improving. Her labs show better numbers now. Alexander exhaled a shaky breath. Does that mean? She's still critical, but we're moving in a positive direction. You can see her, but keep it brief. She's drifting in and out of consciousness. Heart pounding. Alexander followed Dr. Kim into the ICU under the gentle glow of monitors. He spotted Sophia's eyes fluttering open. He rushed to her side carefully. Her gaze was unfocused, but when she saw him, recognition flickered. "Sophia," he whispered, fighting tears. "I'm here." She tried to speak, but managed only a dry rasp. He gently pressed the call button for the nurse, who brought a small cup of water. He wet her lips with a straw. "Baby?" Sophia croaked, voice frail but desperate. Alexander nodded, brushing her forehead. "He's in NICU. He's doing all right. They say he's strong, just small." Relief ghosted across her features, but tears pooled in her eyes. "I was so scared," she managed, voice cracking. I thought I'd never meet him." Alexander gently stroked her hair. You will, I promise." She looked at him with a weak but piercing gaze. "You left me," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I needed you." He bowed his head, tears slipping down his cheeks. "I know, and I hate myself for it. I'm so sorry." They shared a moment, eyes locked, the pain and love tangling in the sterile confines of the ICU. Sophia's hand reached out weakly, and Alexander clutched it, pressing it to his lips. The beep of the machines punctuated the silence between them. The nurse quietly informed Alexander that Sophia needed rest. With great reluctance, he released her hand and stepped out. But hope now flickered where despair had reigned. Sophia was showing signs of recovery. Over the next days, small improvements accumulated. Sophia's blood pressure stabilized further. Her organs began healing. She was transferred to a private recovery room where she could finally rest without the constant barrage of ICU alarms. She asked often about the baby, and soon the doctors allowed her a brief, carefully supervised visit to the NICU, where she saw her tiny son for the first time. Alexander stood behind her wheelchair, tears in his eyes as he witnessed Sophia place a trembling hand into the incubator to touch their baby's curled fist. For a moment, the outside world vanished. There was no money, no corporate empire, no social media frenzy. There was only a mother's love, a father's gratitude, and a newborn whose existence defied the odds. Sophia's recovery was slow, but her spirit revived with each passing day. She remained in the hospital longer than typical postpartum patients, due to her severe complications, and the baby required ongoing care in the NICU. Yet, they were both alive, bonded by a harrowing ordeal that underscored the fragility of life. Throughout this period, Alexander became a fixture at the hospital. He answered every small request from Sophia, fetching extra pillows, adjusting the blinds, helping her sip water. Gone was the phone-obsessed billionaire. He kept his device mostly on silent, except for updates from Randall regarding pressing matters that absolutely could not wait. Even then, he delegated much of the workload to his senior team, instructing them to run Donovan Global in his absence. Some might have seen it as a sign of weakness in the cutthroat corporate world, but Alexander knew it was what he needed to do to be the husband and father his family deserved. Whenever hospital staff recognized him, and they often did, they would offer polite remarks or ask for a quick photo. But Alexander declined all interviews and avoided the paparazzi camped outside. He had no interest in publicity. His focus was on Sophia and their child. Gradually, he and Sophia had the conversations they'd avoided for too long. In hushed tones, punctuated by the hiss of oxygen machines and the beep of monitors, they spoke about how they drifted apart. Sophia, her voice gaining strength each day, told Alexander how helpless she felt, how abandoned. He listened with tears brimming in his eyes, apologizing over and over. She forgave him not all at once, but in cautious increments. The love was still there, but trust would require time to rebuild. During one of these talks, Sophia held his hand, her grip still feeble but determined. "Promise me," she said softly, "no deal, no business, no matter how big, will ever come before us again." He pressed his forehead to hers. "I promise. Nothing matters more than you and our son." In the hallway, staff affectionately referred to Alexander as the Shadow because he refused to leave Sophia's side. Nurses, like Rachel Evans, would comment on how rarely they saw a spouse so present. Their words pricked at Alexander's conscience. He hadn't always been this attentive, and it took a near tragedy to wake him up. As the baby's condition improved, the neonatologist removed some tubes, allowing the parents more contact. One joyous day, they taught Sophia how to perform kangaroo care skin-to-skin contact with the baby, who responded with a tiny, miraculous grip on her finger. Alexander observed with wonder, tears shining in his eyes, as the baby opened his miniature fists in search of comfort. They named him Nathaniel, meaning gift of God. It felt fitting given the ordeal they had survived. Weeks passed with Sophia steadily recovering, and Nathaniel still in the NICU. Alexander refused to leave their sides, slipping back to the mansion only to grab fresh clothes. Each day, the neonatologist reported small victories, Nathaniel gaining an ounce here, stabilizing his breathing there. Watching his tiny son fight for each milestone, Alexander realized how trivial corporate conquests felt by comparison. Meanwhile, Donovan Global faced shareholder unease and a stalled Belfort International deal. When Randall updated Alexander on looming deadlines and board anxieties, Alexander responded with calm resolve. "If the deal dies, it dies," he said. "My family comes first." Confused but respectful, Randall managed the fallout, quietly impressed by this new side of his boss. Sophia, out of danger yet still fragile, took comfort in short visits to Nathaniel's incubator, reading him lullabies and stroking his miniature fingers. Late at night, she and Alexander spoke in hushed tones, apologizing for the hurt and promising a better future. Step by step, they pieced their bond back together, one gentle visit, one heartfelt conversation at a time. Though the business world waited outside, Alexander's priorities had forever shifted. Sophia and Nathaniel were healing, and in that miracle, Alexander discovered what it truly meant to hold the most valuable treasure of all. Weeks later, under the expert care of the NICU staff, baby Nathaniel grew strong enough to go home. Sophia, still regaining her own strength, wept tears of joy as she carried him through the estate's doors, where a welcome home banner fluttered. The once quiet nursery now brimmed with soft toys, gentle nightlights, and an air of hope. Alexander, humbled and protective, marveled at how Nathaniel's tiny hand gripped his finger. Each day became a new challenge of diaper changes and doctor checkups, yet each moment felt like a precious gift. He delegated Donovan Global's day-to-day operations to trusted executives, caring more about his wife's and son's well-being than any multinational merger. One evening, as city lights sparkled through tall windows, Sophia nestled Nathaniel against her shoulder and gazed at Alexander. "Do you regret stepping back?" she asked gently. He shook his head, voice filled with relief. "Only that I didn't do it sooner." They shared a tender, unspoken promise. Never again would business overshadow family. In the following weeks, Alexander reorganized parts of his company, showing investors he could still guide them, just not at the expense of the people he loved most. A calmer deal with Belfort International affirmed that success needn't come at a personal cost. At home, Sophia continued to heal and resumed her passion for philanthropy, vowing to raise awareness for high-risk pregnancies. During her first public speech since giving birth, she spoke with trembling courage about her ordeal. Alexander held their son at the edge of the stage, tears in his eyes, applauding the woman who had fought so bravely. They had almost lost everything, but love and second chances prevailed, reminding them that the true measure of wealth is the joy of holding each other close. Alexander Donovan learned a lesson no billion-dollar deal could ever teach him: that life's real wealth lies in the people we cherish. By the time he saw his wife fighting for her life in that operating room, he realized no boardroom accolade was worth missing the most precious moments of fatherhood and marriage. His harrowing journey from ignoring Sophia's calls to nearly losing her forever changed him. In the end, love prevailed. He emerged with a deeper appreciation for family, stepping back from the corporate empire he built and focusing on what truly mattered: a healthy baby boy, a recovering wife, and a promise that they would walk life's road together. If this heart-wrenching story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Help us spread awareness about the importance of family, health, and the priceless gift of life. Stay tuned for more real-life drama stories that inspire, enlighten, and remind us all what truly matters.